We hear about the cloud literally all the time, right? It's pitched as this absolute magic bullet for basically every IT problem under the sun. But today, we're doing a bit of an autopsy. We're looking at enterprise cloud failures. You know the ones, the whispered stories about massive budgets just completely blown, deadlines totally missed, and projects that absolutely fell flat. In this explainer, we are going to unpack exactly why that happens by looking at the biggest cloud migration failure patterns. We're breaking down the data, the research, and the real-world experiences to show you exactly what goes wrong. Okay, let's dive into this. There's this super pervasive belief out there that cloud migration is primarily just an infrastructure swap. Trading a CapEx data center for an OpEx environment. But here's the thing. The actual technology from the major cloud vendors, it is incredibly reliable. When a migration collapses, it's almost never because the cloud itself broke. It fails because organizations completely misunderstand what it is they are actually packing up and moving.
And honestly, that leads us to a really fascinating paradox. Think about it. AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, they all give you virtually unlimited scalability, just massive compute power and global reach. So why are so many enterprise migrations bleeding money and missing deadlines left and right? The truth? The biggest failures have very little to do with the actual cloud providers. Instead, they follow these incredibly predictable, repetitive patterns across every single industry. It doesn't matter if you're in finance, healthcare, retail, the exact same traps are waiting for you.
All right, section 1, the lift and shift illusion.
For a lot of organizations, the initial goal actually makes perfect sense, right? Move fast, change as little as possible, and reduce your immediate risk. But the hidden reality is vastly different. Applications that were designed for traditional on-prem data centers almost never know how to take advantage of cloud-native capabilities, things like auto-scaling or serverless functions. So what you're actually doing is taking years, maybe decades of accumulated technical debt, tossing it into a shiny new moving box, and paying a premium to ship it to someone else's data center.
And here is exactly where that reality hits your wallet, hard. You start out with your expected cloud costs, which are usually modeled on the assumption of cloud efficiency. But then, the actual bills arrive. When you lift and shift, you are taking these heavy, expensive virtual machines and running them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, regardless of actual demand. Literally exactly how they ran in your old data center. You basically end up paying luxury cloud prices for a totally legacy static architecture. The financial disappointment here can just be absolutely staggering for an enterprise.
To put this into perspective, imagine a massive monolithic enterprise database. You move it over exactly as is. What happens? Well, you get way higher infrastructure costs because you're provisioning for peak load 100% of the time. You get terrible scalability because the app literally doesn't know how to split itself across new cloud resources. You suffer from really low resource utilization during off hours. And, congratulations, you've successfully migrated all your old bugs and bottlenecks. It is entirely possible to have a technically completed, flawlessly executed migration that is simultaneously a massive business failure.
Let's move to our second failure pattern: expectations versus cloud reality.
If you have ever sat in on a cloud pitch meeting, you already know the internal promises used to sell this to the board, right? Lower costs, faster innovation, unmatched agility, the whole shebang. But here's the critical warning. These outcomes are absolutely not automatic just because you changed your hosting environment. Simply changing the physical building where your code lives doesn't magically rewrite your software to be more agile, and it definitely doesn't automatically lower your bills. You have to intentionally architect for those things.
This expectation gap turns into a total operational nightmare when the expected magic collides with hard operational realities. People expect the cloud to just inherently be cheaper, but then they get blindsided by unexpected OpEx, or operational expenses. They completely forget about data transfer costs. It often costs nothing to put data into the cloud, but it can cost an absolute fortune to pull it back out. Storage grows exponentially. Managed services carry premium pricing. And don't even get me started on legacy software licensing in virtualized environments. The cloud fundamentally changes your entire operating and financial model. It doesn't just magically fix broken existing systems. The business impact of this disconnect is incredibly severe. Unrealistic executive expectations can kill a project's reputation practically overnight. Think about it. If the board was promised a 30% reduction in costs, but instead costs actually go up 10% because the apps weren't modernized, leadership is going to label the entire migration a failure. The engineering team might be popping champagne over a flawless technical cutover with zero downtime, but leadership, they only see the missed business metrics. Expectation management is quite literally just as critical as the technical execution itself.
That brings us to our third fatal disease:
Governance, the missing foundation. To truly understand why skipping governance is so deadly, we really have to talk about cloud sprawl. Cloud sprawl is this rapid, wild proliferation of hundreds or even thousands of totally unmanaged cloud resources. In the old days, right, getting a new server took what? 6 months of approvals and a literal forklift. In the cloud, any developer with an API key can spin up 10 massive servers in 5 minutes. Without a solid foundation of governance already in place, this incredible speed leads directly to huge security gaps and just totally runaway, uncontrolled spending.
And this brilliantly illustrates what happens when teams rush to the cloud without a plan. Critical elements just get completely left behind. We're talking identity and access management, strict security policies, resource tagging, so you actually know who owns what, proper cost allocation, multi-account strategies, and hard budget controls. Skipping these steps creates a chaotic, tangled enterprise environment. Trying to retroactively apply tags, security boundaries, and budgets to thousands of active resources after the fact, it's literally like trying to install plumbing in a house after you've already moved in and put up the drywall. It is almost impossible to rein in later.
Moving right along, we arrive at the fourth pattern, the missing operating model.
So, in the legacy data center mindset, if you want to change, you submit a ticket and you wait for a manual approval board. The networking team won't talk to the storage team, who won't talk to the developers. It's totally siloed. But the cloud reality? It demands infrastructure as code. It requires continuous delivery, platform engineering, and a truly seamless DevOps culture. If you move your servers to the cloud, but you still require a developer to wait 3 weeks for an IT ticket to clear just to get a database, you have completely defeated the entire purpose of the cloud.
Actually, scratch that. If you take away absolutely nothing else from this explainer, please remember this one thing. Cloud migration fundamentally changes how technology teams work. Adopting the cloud means you absolutely must adopt a new culture of automation, self-service, and shared operations. If your organizational culture doesn't migrate, your technology migration will fail, for sure.
All right, so we've seen the lift and shift illusion, the expectation mismatch, the lack of governance, and broken operating models. That brings us to our fifth point. The real root cause. The underlying genetic flaw that absolutely kills these migrations is treating cloud adoption as a standard infrastructure project, instead of what it really is, a full-scale business transformation. As I mentioned earlier, the cloud platforms themselves, they perform exactly as they were designed to. The failures happen almost entirely on the human side, usually because the necessary organizational changes are just vastly underestimated by leadership. So the crucial point is that technology is only one tiny slice of the migration pie. You have to account for the people, the processes, governance, operations, financial management, and organizational culture. If you just assign your cloud migrations solely to the IT department and tell them, hey, just figure out the tech, you are ignoring like 80% of what actually makes a migration successful. It really is a massive organization-wide transformation. Now that we deeply understand the diseases, let's pivot to the prescription. Section 6, Blueprint for Cloud Success. If you are currently planning a migration, or maybe you're trying to rescue one that's gone completely off the rails, here are 5 super practical steps. First, you have to migrate with a specific business objective, not just because the cloud is, trendy. Second, modernize only where it actually creates measurable value. You don't have to rebuild everything from scratch, but please don't just lift and shift everything either. Third, build your governance foundation before the very first workload ever moves. Fourth, prepare your teams operationally with new automated processes. And fifth, measure your success by actual business outcomes, like time to market or customer satisfaction, not just by how many servers you manage to move. You've got to think strategically, not just technically. Ultimately, cloud migration doesn't fail because cloud technology is somehow unreliable. It fails when organizations move their infrastructure without transforming the way they design, govern, and operate it. Your overall strategy, your operational maturity, and the alignment of your entire organization. Those are the real drivers of success here. You really can't just rent someone else's computer and expect your business to magically transform. To wrap up our explainer today, I want you to remember this. The cloud is not a shortcut. It's an amplifier. If you go into the cloud with a really strong architecture, solid governance, and a great culture, the cloud is going to accelerate your success like absolutely nothing else. But if you go in with weak governance, highly siloed teams, and a mountain of technical debt, well, the cloud will relentlessly expose and amplify every single one of those gaps, and it's going to send you a massive bill for it. Cloud adoption is a true long-term transformation. So, what does this all mean for you? I actually want to hear from you now. Which of these cloud migration failure patterns have you personally encountered in your own organization?
Was it the whole lift and shift illusion? Maybe the missing governance? Drop your own autopsy reports and experiences in the comments below. It's like a giant puzzle, and we can all definitely learn from these real-world battles. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer today. Keep learning, keep transforming, and I will see you in the next one.